Charles is the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for Sub-Saharan Africa at Google. He's on the line with us. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much. And also my colleague, John Kimani, is on. Should be
Excellent.
on.
Yes, we'll also be
He
speaking
leads
with
our
John
government
shortly.
he leads our developer relations. So he's the one who's actually implementing a lot of that work.
Yeah, he's the government man.
No, he's a developer man.
He's the
I'm the
developer.
government man.
John Kimani as well. Good morning, John, and welcome to the Situation Room.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's start by understanding it from the top level. And what is this accelerator program? Scholarship for 40,000 or 1,000 students at the end will get scholarships to certify on Android. Now, break it down. What is all that, Charles? And then the developer will now tell us what the developers are doing.
Yes. So in fact, John Kimani and the team, the developer relations team, have been working across the continent over the last 5 years or so, since 2017. So this is actually a continuation of an announcement that we made in 2017, where we committed to train 10 million Africans on digital skills. And in addition to that, 100,000 Africans on developer skills as well. And then building on that, we had some more commitments whereby we committed to the African Launchpad Accelerator program, which was meant to help African startups really upskill and look at how to scale by leveraging technology and, where possible, Google tools and services, where we enable them to really reach their markets, their customers, and really serve the audience that they're trying to reach. And so this particular announcement is the most recent of that. It's the next iteration of that, because we believe that over the last 5 years, we've seen some really great progress in terms of the number of people who've gone through that. For example, in terms of the Launchpad Accelerator classes, we've been through 5 of those with over 60 companies across Africa, startups who've gone through that particular program. And so this is just the next iteration of that to make sure that we're enabling even more Africans to understand how to leverage the internet economy to be able to achieve their dreams, and most importantly, create jobs and grow the economies of the different countries that we live in.
Is it accelerators just in the tech space? I mean, is it startups in the tech space, or is it startups just in general? If I am starting up a textile company or is starting up a shop, do I also benefit from this, or is it mainly looking at the techies?
So it's tech-enabled startups, because as Google, our focus is, or our core competence, if I can call it that, is around technology. So we want to be able to impart the knowledge that we have to the people that we're working with. And therefore, if it's a startup, for instance, in the agricultural space, but leverages technology to either reach their consumers or reach and leverage the farmers, for instance, like Twiger Foods, which is probably one of the best known startups here in Kenya, they can still be able to leverage this. And for instance, Twiger was actually one of the recipients of our accelerator programs in the past.
Okay. So, John, you've been working with the others in the accelerator, I mean, in this ecosystem. And the 5 classes that you've had so far, this is the 6th one. Just tell us a bit about the kind of training that then you take them through, and what gets them to qualify for the certification, and what then they get with the certification.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, we have been, as Charles mentioned, we have a 5-year commitment to grow Africa's digital talent. And so we started off with the commitment to train 10 million young Africans on digital skills. We think about talent from a funnel perspective, and software developers are at the tip of that funnel in terms of building solutions that Africans can leverage. And so we have a similar commitment to train software developers. We have been doing this for the last 3 years. And what we announced last week on Thursday was a commitment to now continue that training. And we announced a further 40,000 training opportunities for software developers across Africa. In the last 3 years alone, from a Kenya perspective, we have trained 15,000 software developers. So what happens is that the top developers in this training program will get a scholarship to now sit the professional exams and actually certify on the different training areas that they're going through. And so digital talent is an integral part of any thriving software, startup ecosystem. And so we have to start by building the talent to actually enable that ecosystem. On the startup side, we have also been running an accelerator program. And from a qualifications perspective, we're looking for companies that already have a minimum viable product. They have taken that product to market and tested it out with customers. They already have users who are willing to pay for their solution. And so we come in and take these products and company to the next level by bringing what we call the best of Google, which is a mix of training and access to Google's products. We want them to have access to our platforms, which can help them now grow their solutions. And then finally, we're also building visibility for them in terms of connecting them with opportunities for investment and also opportunities for them to grow their businesses.
I heard you mention that, Charles, it's you mentioned this, that among the organizations that have benefited from this program is Twiger Foods. Did I hear you right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
John, remind me, what class was that in? Class 2?
That was in 2016, about when they were getting started. Yes.
Yes.
2016. And we're now in 2021. Twiger Foods is 8 years old. How old does an organization need to be outside the consideration for being a startup?
John, you may be able to help me with the technical parts. I have my view, but John, please go ahead.
Absolutely, it's a very broad definition. But for us at Google, a company that is 3 years or below is an early stage company for us. Is a startup in the classic sense, and our programs are designed to really connect with these companies at that stage. We believe that that's a sweet spot in terms of bringing in content, workshop, mentorship to sort of help them accelerate their growth. But that definition continues well into 5-8 years as well, especially as you think about funding rounds. But for us, from a Google perspective, 3 years is the right opportunity for us to come in.
Now, the other thing that I want to ask is we're looking at what? A population of 1.2 billion people on the continent, and you want to reach, say, 10 million entrepreneurs or people who are starting off in their business. In my mind, that is not only laudable and commendable, it is fantastic. But I have to ask this question: how does Google gain from this splash? Because Google, by my understanding of it, is not a charitable organization. So how exactly do you hope to gain from this?
That's an excellent question. I think at the end of the day, Google is part of the African ecosystem. We cannot thrive if Africa does not thrive. And so if we start at the top and look at the African numbers, or even just come a bit closer to home, there's a couple of key challenges across the continent, and employment amongst the youth being one of the biggest challenges that we've been facing for quite a long time. And last year, we actually released a report together with IFC, which stated that by 2025, Africa stands to gain about $189 billion in economic output through digital technology and the digital ecosystem. But one of the things that's going to hold us back from realizing that potential is lack of digital skills. And so we're looking at this from that perspective and saying that if we can be able to unlock the talent, and 10 million, as much as it's a big number for us as Google, it still doesn't capture everything. So we need more organizations such as Google to come to the table and really help bring more people to that upskilling. And then something else that's really critical to touch on is the future of work. Now we're seeing a lot of technology shifting the way people are working. COVID-19 has been such a great example of this, whereby most people are working. Imagine last 2 years ago, John and I would be in the studio with you having this interview. But the fact that John is at his home, you're in the studio, I'm at my home, and we're having this conversation through technology is the way that the world is now shifting, and I don't see that moving back. So we really need to make sure that more Africans are able to take advantage of technology, understand how they can leverage it, and really grow through that. And by doing that, Google also will thrive in that ecosystem.
It's interesting that you say that, Charles, because then I think about what has come as a result of people having to because of people having to work in a different way because of COVID. So those who've lost their jobs over time have had to become innovative. Then have had to now think of ideas for their own business. Have then had to develop very quickly, in some cases, apps, for example, for deliveries and things like that. And then having gone on further to see, okay, I can actually create something else. So looking at all of this, would you say that Google is a direct encourager of entrepreneurship on the continent? And with the kind of support that is being given, would you say that you are directly encouraging more and more individuals to go into entrepreneurship?
Absolutely. I think I'll step back and talk about, actually, when you think about the economy and the African ecosystem as it stands, there's a report that we released also late last year called the Digital Sprinters. And the thesis of this report is that countries that take advantage of the digital ecosystem, digitize the country, the services, and the way that you engage with citizens more broadly, digitize the ecosystem in terms of the companies and getting companies registered, taking advantage of how you get to the end consumer, you will leapfrog many countries who have taken a much longer time to get to where they are in terms of development. We call this the digital sprinters. And just think about this in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. So we at Google definitely encourage more entrepreneurship because we believe that that's how you create more jobs. And governments will be able to create only a certain amount of jobs. So the ability to have that private-public partnership where everyone is creating jobs in the way that they can is absolutely critical. And so what government has to do is make sure that there is progressive legislation that enables entrepreneurship. And then most of the economy is actually run by small and medium-sized businesses. So we at Google are really focused on those SMBs to see how can they be able to grow and really create more jobs. And I'll give a quick example of a product that we have that has really been useful, especially around this time of COVID. It's called Market Finder. And Market Finder is just part of the suite of products that are dedicated to SMBs, which include helping SMBs get online, showcase the businesses that they have. But Market Finder goes a step further and enables those SMBs, for instance, in Kenya, to reach their audiences beyond Kenya, which is a really critical thing because when you're looking at the way the COVID situation has sort of evolved, certain countries are getting into a terrible situation. For instance, right now, India has been in a really bad situation. Thankfully, we in Kenya are just sort of coming out of that. The US, Israel, for instance, they're way further ahead. I think, for instance, Israel has almost resumed to normality with most of the population being vaccinated and really many places opening up. So a small business in Kenya can be able to leverage Market Finder to see what market there is in Israel, for instance, or in the US. And leveraging that tool, they can be able to also understand what are the tariffs that they need to pay for their goods and services to get to that particular market. And so you are absolutely right that technology is going to be a critical component to help entrepreneurship grow. And entrepreneurship in itself is going to enable the economies to thrive. And that's the only way as a continent we're going to see a lot of the challenges that we're facing right now sort of go behind us.
Today is a day when I'm going to keep lauding Google for their forward thinking and for seeing into the business future of technology. But I'd like to understand how it is that you will deal with an unpleasant reality, but one which must come with the sort of outreach that you have planned and have laid out and are implementing. It's called bad press. The things that you do, there are individuals, there are groups of people who will point to and bring about complaints that they believe are valid. For instance, last year and some of this year, there have been lots of complaints about what you call data mining. And Google has had that particular gun pointed directly at their forehead. How do you manage and handle such things? And how do you bring out your side of the story so that it's actually heard for what it is?
Thank you for that question. And it's one which we take very seriously in terms of privacy for our customers. At the end of the day, Google does not exist without the users who are utilizing our tools and services every single day, every single moment. And what Google endeavors to do is make sure that we're really helpful for everyone who's using our tools. And there's a couple of things that we really focus on. The first one is making sure that our customers trust us. And we take that trust very seriously. We want to make sure that our customers have control and they can also manage the information that we have on them. And also not just manage it, but manage how we use it. Imagine a world whereby you, as a consumer, are able to get the information that you need at your fingertips. That is only made possible by certain information about you being available. However, that information is not going to be shared with any third party, and that information is fully within your control for you to either wipe it out completely from your account. So if you go to myaccount.google.com, you can actually see exactly the information that we've collected on you. You can see how you can be able to pause that if you want to pause it, or if you want to completely clean it. So at the end of the day, the way we approach this is to ensure that our users are fully in control in terms of the data that we have on them. And that actually goes back to, in terms of data, it goes back to the ethos of how we at Google have always approached our consumer utility going, and we'll continue doing that going forward.
The last question that I'm going to ask you today, John, this is a question that I'm going to direct to you. How will you measure success with these trainings that you are undertaking and with the people and the enterprises that you're engaging? How will you determine that the purpose for which these trainings were intended have actually attained the desired goal?
Absolutely. That's a great question. We're looking at three things from a Google perspective. The first of which is the number of graduates from the programs, ensuring that the participants and the learners who are coming on board on these training programs are actually completing their training successfully. The second part is on the number of solutions, relevant local solutions that are being built by these developers. The growth of these applications on our platforms, for example. You mentioned applications and their distribution, and so ensuring that these applications are actually being used by Kenyans in a meaningful way. That's important for us as well. And finally, specifically on the startup front, are we helping these companies grow their revenues, grow their usage of Google products, and finally, are they able to connect with the rest of the ecosystem from an investment perspective? Are they able to raise funds to sort of fuel and catalyze their growth? And most importantly, from an economic growth perspective, are they able to create jobs and build sustainable businesses? So that's a lens that we're keeping on strongly. Okay. And so those are the three most important things for us.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, we keep talking about the fact that entrepreneurship is going to grow the economy. It's going to provide jobs, and essentially what is going to grow the economy. So we're basically teaching people how to harness their trade and then perfect it, right? Whatever it is in this, perfect your trade, whether it's on the other side where you talked about Market Finder before, Charles, and then on this side, John, when you're talking about developing skills, software development and things like that. How young do we want to go in terms of age of the individuals who then will be trained? I ask this because I see a budding population of very young Africans, and we're talking about 7 to 15 years old, who would be very interested in this area, but unfortunately most times don't get the training that they need because they are focused on their normal school work. But then I also look at those who succeeded in other parts of the world, whether it's in sports, you have things like the NBA, you have the junior NBA. Whether it's a tennis association, then you have junior tennis training, who are starting as early as 4 years old, training people in this particular trade. And I see that as one of the missing links on the continent is that we don't start young. If we started much younger than 18 or 20, then we're able to teach certain concepts so that at a young age they've been able to grasp that. How young would you want to go in this training? And do you see that as a percentage of the population that you could target? I guess the question for both of you.
Absolutely. Charles, I guess I could start and then you could chime in as well. What we've done from a Google perspective is that we've created content that complements school curriculum across the continent. We understand that the complexities around embedding some of this digital technologies training in ongoing school curriculum. And so what we've done is made that content available for parents. So for example, if you've got a teenager who's interested in technology, we've got a computer science first curriculum that we have put online. It's free for everyone. And students as young as 13, as low as 11 can start accessing that content and starting to play around with the concepts around logical processing and building software applications for their age groups and even beyond. And then also on the university side of things, we are building content that again complements what these students are going through in school. The developer training program, for example, is a great example. And the idea here is to enable these students to grow with these skills and ensure that they have them at the forefront of what they're doing on a daily basis. And finally, in terms of what we're doing from a dev training perspective, we're enabling developers to also build solutions in that education space. And we're starting to see applications that are enabling young children as young as 8, 9 years of age to also start engaging with technical trainings. And so it's not just a Google Play. We're also enabling the broader ecosystem to leverage our platforms to build solutions targeted at that age demographic.
Yes, John covered it quite well. The only thing I was going to add is that also when we're thinking about young children, it's really important to think about the online safety for these children. So that's an area that we've also been really focused on, making sure that we're working closely with different educational systems. And even in certain cases, we've had the success of incorporating child online safety into the curriculum. And so that's something that here in Kenya, we've worked very closely with the Communications Authority. We've worked closely with the Scouts and Girl Guides Association to really embed the knowledge of technology into day-to-day life of the children at that young age, because it's important not for them to just learn the opportunity, but also understand the downsides and the dangers and how to protect them while they're online. So I think between John and I think we've covered most of the things that we're doing in terms of the online safety as well as the educational piece for knowledge for our children in Kenya.
Indeed you have. And thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. All the best as you roll out this new phase of the program. Charles Murito, Director of Policy and Government Affairs for Sub-Saharan Africa at Google, and John Kimani, who leads the developer relations as well at Google. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for speaking to us, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a great day too.
Asante sana.